If you're looking to buy a house, then you need to watch this video because we're going to go over 8 of the biggest mistakes you need to watch out for when you buy a house. The first biggest mistake you can make when you want to buy a house is to not work with a real estate agent already before you go into it. A lot of people think that when you're working with a real estate agent on the buyer side that you need to pay them some type of commission, but that's not actually true. It's actually completely free to use a real estate agent when you're buying a house. The seller will actually pay the commission to that real estate agent for you, and it's really good to have your own real estate agent instead of going straight to a listing agent, because that listing agent has what's called a fiduciary duty to the seller, which means that they have a duty to work in the seller's best interest. While if you go with your own real estate agent, that real estate agent now needs to work in your best interest. But if you go straight to the listing agent, they're only going to work in the seller's best interest, and that puts you at less of a chance of getting a good deal on that house. Meanwhile, if you work with your own agent, you'll get the best deal possible because they're going to work and negotiate to get you the best deal that you possibly can get, since they are working in your best interest. Not to mention, it's completely free. The seller will pay the commission to that buyer's agent at the end of the transaction anyways, so you have nothing to worry about, and you just get that great representation without having to do anything. Another big mistake I see people making a lot is confusing pre-qualifications with pre-approvals. A lot of people go to their bank and say they want to get a loan for a house or whatever, and then they come back and they go talk to an agent and they show their agent what's called a pre-qualification, thinking that it's a pre-approval, and really it's not. You cannot buy a house with a pre-qualification. You have to buy with a pre-approval. A pre-qualification is just qualifying you for that loan, but it isn't actually getting you pre-approved for it. So you're not actually approved for that loan, you're only qualifying for it, which means if you go through with it, yeah, now you can go ahead and get pre-approved, but you can't straight up buy a house with that pre-qualification. You need to take it from the next step of pre-qualification to pre-approved, which is why I usually recommend going to a loan officer or a mortgage broker, because they will more understand that you need to go straight into a pre-approval, while big banks will usually try to go the route of pre-qualifying you first, and it can really mess things up and get you really confused, confuse your agent, and make the whole process a lot worse. Also, make sure you don't neglect to understand the market. It's not your job to fully understand what's going on in the market, it is your agent's job, but the more you know, the better off you are. Talk to your agent, get some knowledge, get some info, so you can better provide yourself and your family with more knowledge to understand the market of should you even really buy now, or what should you really do. Another big thing I see is people letting desperation guide their actions. You might really want a house, might want to be really desperate for it, but just remember, in the long end, how is this going to look for you 10 years from now, 5 years from now? If you get in this house now at a higher price that maybe you shouldn't have paid for it, and then 5 years, 10 years later, you're living paycheck to paycheck, all because you wanted this house and you're so desperate for it. I mean, now you're not so desperate for it, but before, back then, you were so desperate to get into a house, you were willing to pay whatever for it. You didn't care if the roof was leaking, you didn't care if you needed a new AC, you didn't care if the foundation was cracking, you just wanted to get into something, and that could really screw you over in the long run. So don't let desperation guide your actions. Really use your head, think about it logically. Do not buy with your heart, buy with your brain. Think about what you're getting into, what needs to be done to the house, what needs to be fixed, is it worth it, is it worth what you're paying? Think about all of these things. I also see a lot of buyers that actually hesitate to make an offer. You do not want to hesitate to make an offer. If you like a house, get the offer written up ASAP and get it sent out. If you're worried about things that might be wrong with the house, that's what the inspection is for. You'll get your inspection done. If things are wrong, you get the seller to credit to fix it, or you get them to fix it. Or if it's really that bad and they don't want to fix it, you just back out of the contract. Sure, you'll lose a couple $100s, but that's more worth it than just not putting an offer on in the first place and just thinking too much ahead of what could be wrong when really maybe nothing is wrong. So you want to make sure that you fully understand what you're going into, first of all, and then don't hesitate to put in that offer. Get the offer in, get it accepted, deal with everything else afterwards. And like I was saying earlier with that desperation act, I mean, we do see a lot of people that are overpaying for a home. You want to really avoid this if you really can, because if you're overpaying for a home, let's say there's a house listed for $320,000 and you pay $340,000, and yeah, everything goes through, but then a couple years later, 2 years later, you want to sell the house, but it's not even worth what you bought it for because you overpaid for it, then you're going to miss out on a lot of gains there that you could have made if you just made a proper offer beforehand, or if you didn't let your desperation guide you and you just were careful with what you offered. You also want to make sure you do not skip the home inspection. Please, please, please never skip the home inspection. I don't care if you're buying cash, finance, whatever you're doing, you do not want to skip a home inspection unless you're a flipper or whatever. Home inspections are very important. You never know what's wrong with the house. Do not take anything at face value. You want to make sure you get an inspector in there, get a good inspection done, get up in the attic, see the foundation, see the utilities, the roof, everything. You want to make sure everything is in the best condition that it possibly can be. And if there is something wrong with it that you want it to be credited or you want it to be fixed already before you move in. It's very important. People really like to neglect this part and they think they can just skip over it. But when a year or two down the line you freaking have a house with all these problems because you didn't do an inspection, you're going to regret it. Make sure you budget for your closing costs as well. I see a lot of people that don't really work this cost into their upfront payments that they're putting up, and they think, okay, well, I just need my down payment and that's it, I'm good. But you also need to worry about your closing costs, not just your down payment. Your down payment, so you're a first-time home buyer putting 3.5% down. But you need to remember your closing costs too. Closing costs are going to be anywhere from 2 to 3.5% down for the closing costs. And so you're really putting up around maybe 5-6% on that house up front, not just that 3.5%. So a lot of people will miss out on this and forget about this, and kind of messes them up in the long run because now they're missing all this money. And right now in this market, we do have sellers that can pay closing costs, but it's not always going to happen. There could be a house you really want and they're just not going to do it. But if you actually had that money, you could get the house. There are also lenders that will cover your closing costs for you, depending if you're a first-time home buyer or not, or whatever programs they offer. That's a really good thing to look into too, to make sure the less money you can put up front, the better. The more money you can use from the lenders or from the sellers or from whatever else, the better. The bottom line is nobody's really perfect. You're going to make some mistakes. So you're going to forget some things you might want to do that maybe you should have done. Make sure you talk to your realtor. Make sure you talk to your lender. Make sure you get as much knowledge as you can to make sure you make the least amount of mistakes as possible and get your transaction done as smoothly as possible. But I really hope this video helped you guys out, and if it did, please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when I put out a new video every single week. And if you do have any questions for me, please feel free to DM me here or here, and I'd be happy to help you out. Thanks for watching. See ya.